Can you picture the exact moment when a captain's eyes turned cold as steel, staring down at a trembling sailor who tried to flee his floating prison? The crack of the whip, the splash of blood on weathered deck planks, the collective silence of men who know they're witnessing their own possible fate. Today we're diving deep into the brutal reality of maritime justice during the age of exploration, and if you're fascinated by the dark corners of history that textbooks never mention, you're about to discover why desertion aboard colonial ships was quite literally a death sentence. Recognize the suffocating atmosphere that filled every corner of those wooden vessels when word spread that someone had tried to escape. The air itself seemed to thicken with dread, carrying the acrid smell of tar and unwashed bodies mixed with something darker, pure, primal fear. During the 16th and 17th centuries, approximately 15% of all sailors attempted desertion at some point during their voyages, according to surviving ship logs from Spanish and Portuguese fleets. The punishment was swift and merciless, and the fear only grew stronger. Feel the rough hemp rope scraping against calloused palms as crew members were forced to tie their own shipmates to the mainmast. The texture was coarse, unforgiving, leaving rope burns that would serve as permanent reminders of what they'd witnessed. Ship records from 1580 show that Captain Miguel Santos ordered 47 lashes for attempted desertion, followed by immediate execution if the sailor survived the flogging. The sound of leather striking flesh echoed across the waters for miles, but the worst was yet to come. Listen to the haunting silence that preceded each execution, broken only by the creaking of wooden beams and the rhythmic slapping of waves against the hull. You could hear a man's labored breathing, the whispered prayers in Portuguese or Spanish, the metallic clink of shackles. Maritime law of 1563 explicitly stated that desertion was punishable by death, with no exceptions for age, illness, or family circumstances. The ocean held no mercy for the weak, and death was always listening. Imagine the captain standing on the quarterdeck, his weathered face showing no emotion as he pronounced the sentence in a voice that carried across the entire ship. His uniform, though salt-stained and worn, still commanded absolute authority over the lives of every soul aboard. Historical documents reveal that captains had unlimited power over their crews, backed by royal decree and maritime codes that treated ships as sovereign territories. The condemned man's fate was sealed with a simple nod. The darkness was spreading fast. Contemplate the primitive methods used to carry out these executions, each one designed to serve as both punishment and deterrent. The most common was keel hauling, dragging the victim under the ship's hull, where barnacles and sharp metal would tear flesh from bone. Portuguese. Naval records from 1592 document over 200 cases of keel hauling, resulting in death within the first 3 minutes of submersion. The water turned crimson in seconds, and it was about to get worse. Visualize the makeshift gallows constructed from ship masts and rigging, assembled by the very men who might face the same fate. Tomorrow, the wood was dark with moisture and age, splinters jutting out like tiny daggers waiting to draw blood. English colonial ships carried standardized execution equipment by 1610, including pre-measured nooses and weighted chains for ocean burials. The rope swayed hypnotically in the Atlantic breeze. Terror was becoming routine. Observe how the remaining crew members were forced to watch every detail of the execution, their eyes reflecting a mixture of horror and relief that it wasn't them facing death. Their faces, gaunt from months of poor nutrition and constant labor, showed the hollow expression of men who had seen too much. Ship manifests from 1598 reveal that witnessing executions was mandatory for all crew members, as failure to attend was itself considered insubordination, punishable by flogging. The lesson was carved into their memories forever, and the ocean was always hungry. Recognize the calculated psychology behind these public displays of absolute power, designed to crush any thoughts of rebellion before they could take root. Every splash of blood, every scream of agony, every final plea for mercy served a purpose beyond simple punishment. If you think sharing this brutal reality with others might help them understand the true cost of those Golden Age expeditions, then spread the word about these untold histories. French naval archives from 1605 show that ships with regular executions had 40% fewer attempted mutinies than those with lenient captains. The message was written in blood and salt. Avail yourself of the knowledge that these executions followed specific rituals designed to maximize their psychological impact on surviving crew members. The condemned sailor was typically given one final meal, usually just hardtack and watered-down wine, before being marched to the center of the main deck. Spanish colonial regulations from 1579 required that last rites be administered by the ship's chaplain, though many vessels sailed without any religious figure aboard. The ceremony lasted exactly 13 minutes from start to finish. Death kept perfect time. Perceive the brutal efficiency with which these maritime executions were carried out, leaving no room for escape or intervention. The victim's hands were bound behind his back with the same type of rope used to secure the ship's rigging, thick salt-encrusted hemp that cut deeply into the wrists. Execution records from Dutch East India Company ships show an average time of 4 minutes from the reading of charges to the moment of death. The body was immediately weighted down and cast overboard. The sea claimed everything. Recall that these weren't isolated incidents of cruelty, but systematic enforcement of laws designed to maintain order during months-long voyages through hostile waters. Every major maritime power, Spain, Portugal, England, France, and the Netherlands, had similar codes governing shipboard discipline. Italian naval historian Francesco Benedetti documented 1,147 confirmed executions for desertion between 1580 and 1650 among Mediterranean fleets alone. The numbers tell only part of the story, but the human cost was immeasurable. Understand the desperate circumstances that drove sailors to attempt desertion despite knowing the inevitable consequences of being caught. Life aboard these vessels was so unbearable that many men chose to risk certain death rather than endure another day of systematic brutalization. Ship surgeons' logs from 1603 reveal that 60% of crew members suffered from malnutrition, disease, or untreated injuries by the third month of any voyage. The choice between slow death and quick execution seemed rational. Desperation bred desperate actions. Analyze the various methods deserters used to escape their floating prisons, from jumping overboard near coastal areas to hiding in supply barrels during port stops. The most common attempt involved swimming ashore during night watches, though survival rates were less than 10% due to strong currents, cold water, and hostile wildlife. Portuguese colonial records show that of 340 documented desertion attempts between 1590 and 1610, only 23 men successfully reached land and freedom. The odds were never in their favor. Hope was a dangerous luxury. Confront the harsh reality that these executions were often carried out by men who sympathized with the victim, but had no choice except to follow orders or face the same fate themselves. The ship's crew became both jury and executioner, forced to participate in the very system that oppressed them all. A surviving letter from sailor João Ferreira, dated 1599, describes watching his best friend's execution. "We wept inside while our hands did the devil's work. The psychological scars lasted lifetimes. Brotherhood died with every execution." Discover how these brutal practices shaped not just individual voyages, but the entire character of maritime exploration and colonial expansion. The willingness to sacrifice human lives for discipline and profit became a defining characteristic of European naval power. Modern historians estimate that execution-related deaths accounted for 8 to 12% of all maritime casualties during the colonial period, a staggering figure that reveals the true cost of empire. The blood spilled on those deck planks fertilized the roots of global commerce, and in the end the ocean kept all their secrets. Conclude that behind every map drawn, every trade route established, and every colony founded, lay countless unmarked graves beneath the waves. The men who died for attempting to flee their torment left no monuments, no family records, no lasting memory except in the salt-stained pages of ship logs that few would ever read. These were fathers, sons, brothers, and friends whose only crime was wanting to breathe free air once more. Their stories deserve to be told, their suffering acknowledged, and their humanity remembered. The golden age of exploration was built on foundations of human bones and tears, a truth that makes those grand historical narratives infinitely more complex and painful. We honor them not by forgetting their agony, but by ensuring that their deaths were not meaningless, that in learning about their fate, we become more compassionate guardians of human dignity in our own time. Can you imagine facing that choice yourself? Slow death or quick execution? The men who built our modern world with their suffering deserve more than footnotes in history books. They deserve our recognition, our respect, and our promise that their stories will not be forgotten. Share this hidden history with someone who needs to understand that progress often comes with a price paid in human blood. Don't forget to watch the video and playlist that will appear on the screen.